How do you read the agricultural landscape? What can landscape architecture learn from a productive farm? What can a productive farm learn from landscape architecture? This video documents the efforts of 13 students to explore these questions within the context of a landscape architecture design studio at Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey. I was one of those students, and I'll guide you through our process, from the initial exploration of our study site, through the iterative processes of research and design, and into our final output, in which we constructed a full-scale trailhead. My hope is to illuminate the process of studio design in a real-world setting, and to share the work that we accomplished in this studio as a contribution to a larger discussion around agricultural literacy and the way we all relate to the landscapes that sustain us. Aldo Leopold, one of the great American environmentalists, once said that the language of any farm is the farmer's portrait of himself. And so our first step in learning about this farm is to meet the farmer and to meet the farm. To enter this farm, we crossed a physical barrier, an electric fence, something you just don't confront in ordinary pedestrian life. In reading this electric fence as part of the landscape, it tells us something about the nature of this farm, namely that animals, who might otherwise leave on their own accord, are being asked to stay within some delineated boundary. We then entered a large field where we saw grass, lots of grass. There was no indication of a plowed row or a straight and orderly line as you might expect in crop agriculture. What we found looked, you might say, natural, as though it had been there without human intervention. The grassy floor we walked on was muddy, drenched with winter's rain. And it was also uneven, pocked with hoofprints slightly larger than a fist. Without seeing the animals that occupied this field, we were beginning to guess who lived there. And then we met the residents. And the residents had neighbors. We were beginning to read the landscape of this farm. We had identified plant and animal life, took in the sounds and the scents, examined the soil and the drenched pasture beneath our boots. But we wanted to increase our agricultural vocabulary and deepen the context from which we would understand this landscape. So we spent a weekend at the NOFA conference, that is the Northeast Organic Farming Association, where we attended farming seminars, discussed farming practices, and rubbed elbows with an engaged farming community. And from this crash course we walked away with new knowledge and perspective on things like biodynamics, a holistic approach to organic agriculture that attempts to integrate the interrelated ecologies of soil, plants, animals, and the atmosphere and employ them in self-sustaining systems. We got in deep with manure. Humble manure, we examined its role in the regeneration of soil quality, as well as practices to avoid the dangers of non-point source pollution. From a historical perspective, we studied agricultural practices that took place in New Jersey before European settlement and surveyed farming practices that have withstood the test of historical time, such as beekeeping, the multifaceted art of balanced grazing, and the pragmatic practice of composting. When we looked back at the pastures, we took note of the water that moved across the landscape. A consideration with implications on both micro and macro scales, the flow of water turned our thoughts to the position of this farm within a greater watershed system. And so we used Geographic Information Systems, or GIS, to study regional agriculture and how our farm fits into a larger agricultural network, with implications not only biological and physical, but also social and economic. We analyzed groundwater recharge at the watershed scale to understand how the permeable pastures we had walked on were contributing to the overall health of the aquifers beneath us. We thought about ideas of open space and public access, and how this farm might become part of a larger open space network, because after all, in order to support agricultural literacy, you have to provide access to observe agricultural land. And so, watching the sun descend along with the temperature on a January afternoon, we were left to ponder the spirit of the place. How could the rich context we'd uncovered through research and observation find expression through design, such that it engaged and indeed augmented the unique character of this farm? Prepared to address this complex question, we would begin the process of design. Our first group design session of the studio. It may seem chaotic, and to be perfectly honest, there is a certain amount of chaos you have to work through in the beginning. The first step is just to get your ideas out, to communicate them with your fellow designers, often in the form of a sketch. And in many ways, the design process is about organization, refining your ideas from a state of chaos into a coherent vision. In a phrase, our goal in this design effort is to promote agricultural literacy. Our job is to design a trailhead that would allow visitors to enter a system of hiking trails on the farm. That trailhead, by design, would have to express something of the agricultural nature of the place, and open the visitor's eyes to some better understanding of the place they are in. We would work in groups to formulate design proposals to meet these criteria. One of the first steps is always to begin drawing, to get your ideas out on paper or onto some other medium where you can begin to address design challenges in a visual manner. Design drawing in these initial stages is about experimentation. Some people are more comfortable sketching on a piece of trace paper. Others prefer to draw in the computer. And very often will create models to understand an idea in 3 dimensions. The objective is to advance your idea, your design, to refine it, to move it forward as far as you can. And a vital part of design advancement, a skill we all work on, is critical reflection upon the work you've done so far. So to help with that, we invite people to our work sessions that can provide a critical point of view. Our faculty members, other design and building professionals, the client, these are all people who can look at a design with fresh eyes and offer a critique that can help the whole thing work better, or become more coherent, or perhaps more expressive. As the semester moves along, we begin to present our work. Formal presentations force us to refine the graphical expression of design ideas and to express our thoughts cogently and professionally. The presentation initiates a conversation around the work itself, which always leads to new insight, and whatever new insight you gain ultimately gets worked back into your design. In this way, design is an iterative process. You can and should always go back to make what you have better, to use any new information you can to move your design ahead. After our presentations, we decided to re-engage the place to refine our designs, so we went back to the farm for an afternoon work session. The place had changed immensely since that January visit. How would the seasonal change impact our perception of the place, and how would that be reflected in design? Here is a sample of the work that we accomplished. It doesn't happen in every design studio, but this course gave us a chance to bring one of our design elements to life in built form. We decided to build a trailhead that would be constructed by harvesting the trunks, branches, and vines of invasive plant species in the forest. The construction would become a group effort by the entire class, and the spirit for such work had been forged in our first visit to the farm. We worked together, and the role of each team member seemed to evolve from each individual's unique set of experiences and skills. We had plant identifiers and gatherers, we had structural experts, we had people with enough patience to arrange thousands of twigs into a cohesive structure. The sense of reward derived from the teamwork was the unexpected gift of the entire studio process. And in a way it harkened back to some of what we had learned in studying the history of agriculture. Before the onslaught of mechanization, the collective strength of the community was relied upon to get things accomplished, to plow the fields, to build the barns, to gather the harvests. We had tapped into the benefits of collective effort, the strength of community. And maybe that is one of the major lessons that agricultural literacy has to offer.